You watch this, just so everybody knows, this only took like 3 hours with manually doing the plasma cutting and the welding. So you judge if it was worth it or not. So you've seen the title of the video, so you know what's going on here. So this is the A8 that we're going to be using to test an automatic transmission instead of a CVT for putting in like jukes and centrons. So we still want to turbo it. Now, originally I was going to use the entire setup off of the race car because this is going to go in the race car for testing. And I said, no, because that doesn't translate over very well. So I want to try to make the most budget-friendly turbo manifold possible to see if we can make something work for cheap. I spent more hours than I'd like to admit one night trying to find an engine that has a port-to-port center matching of this engine. Now, I couldn't find anything that's an exact match, but I found something that was really, really close. And I'll show you what that is. This right here is an exhaust manifold gasket for a 4G63 Evo engine. Now, if we put this like this, we can see our ports almost line up, right? It's pretty close. I mean, obviously they're not perfect off on the sides here, but they pretty much line up. So I went on Amazon. Apparently they sell Evo manifolds for $100. Now, this thing is a piece of shit. It's got holes in it that I found already. There's one right back there. I mean, this is terrible. I wouldn't put this on the way it is, but when we put it on here like this, you know, things start to line up a little bit. So I went ahead and 3D printed a Juke A8 and an A8 flange with an Evo flange over it. Now, the Evo flange ended up being the wrong proportions, but it gave me a good idea if this is going to work or not. And here's pictures of that. So the most expensive part of making a turbo manifold is dealing with all the bends and the welding and everything. So in this instance, a majority of that work is done. Now, obviously there's some repairs that need to get done, but this was a $80 turbo manifold. And it's got room to where we could put a wastegate on it. So cool. Now, the astute among you will know that this flange is way too far back to put into a juke. And we're going to get to the solution for that in a little bit. But now what we need to do is plasma cut out a flange for this head, which I'm just going to trace cut, and then clean it up, see if it fits, and go from there. I'd say not too bad for freehand. Well, tracing, I should say. Should fit like that. A little clean up, a couple spots. Cool. Cool, that fits. So the ports don't match because on the A8, the ports are round. On the 1.6, the port are oval. Clearly need to clean that up a bit. So I got to clean the ports up a little bit, obviously. The important part is that the entirety of that circle opens up into the port. That's what all these extra holes are here for. So those would be used for the 1.6. So I'm going to finish cleaning this flange up and then move on to the next step. There's a couple ways we can go about this. This is the 3D printed MR flange, and then this is the Evo gasket. We notice we got a big gap there, right? So that's obviously no bueno. The object of the game here is to make a turbo manifold for really, really cheap. And that's going to require a little bit of jank. Now, we're not trying to make 900,000 horsepower off this, so the flow doesn't need to be perfect. It just has to work. Because again, this is kind of all for giggles. So, this is what I am proposing. If we put it on like this. Now, when we put this manifold gasket, when we put the gasket on the engine, you could see that the round part of the ports on the A8 lined up with these ports enough to work. So I haven't cleaned these holes up yet. I still need to do that. But what I'm going to do is actually just weld the Evo flange to this one. Well, that's crazy. Well, you're right, it is. But we have a hole that matches up. We know that these two ports line up pretty damn good, right? This is kind of our problem area here on both sides. That's actually a pretty easy fix. I can just fill weld that in and then, fill weld that in. Ain't gonna be pretty, but it's gonna work. And then as far as through holes, because obviously we need this hole, this hole, this hole, and this hole, we'll just drill them out and make enough room so that we can get a bolt on there to bolt the flange down. I mean, it's gonna be that simple. In the case of these ones up here, we'll cut this chunk, cut this right out, and that'll leave enough room for that. Do the same thing right here. And then the tricky one is kind of these little lips ones down here, but we can figure that out. So, and then we can just take a carbide bit and merge this so that it flows a little better, and then merge this side so it flows a little better. So I could probably do this in about an hour and just make it so it works, which is all we're trying to do here. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean the other side of this up because it's still a mess. And then I'm gonna get to work figuring out how to make 2 flanges into 1. All right, so got the top tabs cut. Those are the easy ones to deal with. I gotta figure these ones out down here though. So you can see this hole is one I gotta get a bolt through. So if I cut this back, I might be hitting that pipe still. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to bore that out and possibly weld a piece around it to like bring it up to the same level as this, or the pieces that I cut off from those ears I can put there. So I have to play around with that a little bit, but that's essentially how it's gonna go. Hey, it's on there. That's exciting. So we got that bolt in, and then that bolt in. This one we're gonna have to work on getting like tight, but that's all in. So before I weld all this, we're gonna deal with the elephant in the room. Let me go get my tripod. Okay, so obviously, if we put a turbo on, now this is just a $120 eBay turbo I have. If we put the turbo on the way that you would normally in one of these cars to make the intake over here, that's clearly just not gonna fit, right? That's just, firewalls like right here. So here's what we're gonna do. We are going to mount it backwards. Now, we have a little clearance issue just because this turbo is huge. But we're going to mount this backwards. Oh, I don't have the mass airflow sensor. On this particular application, we don't have a mass airflow sensor to worry about. So it's just air going in. That's it. But if we were to do this on a car with a mass airflow sensor, they sell harnesses, 24-inch extension harnesses for the MAF, and we can actually make our intake right here. Right, just turn it right up, put your mass airflow sensor on there, put your air filter over on top of the engine mount, somewhere over there, and you're good to go. And doing it this way, we have a straight shot out the turbo, no weird bends, easy peasy. What about the oil drain? Okay, so the oil drain is a little bit on the complicated side. So usually the oil drain on these goes about here, right? Clearly we can't do that without like running it along here. So that's a problem. Simple solution. On this particular one, we're going to be doing an oil drain on the front of the engine, which I'm showing that in a video that's coming up. But we're basically going to run the oil drain right out here and then right around past the thermostat housing over here and then down. It's really long, but that doesn't matter as long as the slope is always going downward. Oil feed, that's easy. Now, downpipe. The downpipe is actually going to be pretty straightforward, literally. We can turn right out of here, and right in this area right here, we squeeze right through here the 2.5, and then our exhaust 2-bolt flange is usually right here. So it's going to be just a quick, really short downpipe with not anywhere near as tight a bend as from factory. So this should fit. Now, to confirm that, I kind of need a car. But if it doesn't fit, we'll make it fit. Another option we have is to just get a riser and just lift the turbo up higher, which would make servicing it a lot easier, but we could lift it up higher, which would give us more room behind here because we can tilt it forward. But I want to try to get it on like this, because I think doing it down low like that will kind of be pretty cool. This might not be the turbo we're using. I have another eBay turbo that we might use. This one, I just don't know if we're going to use it, just because it uses the 5-bolt flange internally wastegated, and I don't have an internal wastegate thing for it, and it won't fit behind here. So I'm going to weld a flange here, or a pipe here that turns down, and we're just going to put the wastegate, an external wastegate, down here. So this looks like it's going to work, and it's not going to be that much work to do it. So I just got to weld this flange now. Hopefully it's flat, and then, you know, clean the ports out, and we should have ourselves a $100 turbo manifold for this car, which would be great, because then we won't have to make expensive ones. All right, so this is how we're going to do this. I have a juke flange, it's actually my last one. I have that clamped, obviously, a lot to this so that we can prevent as much warping as possible. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to get every single spot with these on here, but I can get most of it, and it will just prevent some of the warping. I'm worried about this flange warping, not this one, because all the runners are going to get welded on the inside anyway. So we just want to make sure this does not warp. So I'm just going to get to the welding. You guys don't really want to just watch that happen. So I'm going to crank out as much as I can and see where we end up. All right, we have a welded manifold. It was a royal pain in the butt getting in those little tight crevices, but it's all bolted on there. That bolt's sort of sketchy, but not care. Sweet. So that's the outer part of the flange. I do need to do the inside still, and like grind stuff down so it fits, but for a start, that'll work. So the next thing we got to do is figure out getting the turbo to actually fit, which should be easy. I'm not going to actually have a down pipe on this. It's going to be an up pipe because it's going on the race car, so we don't need a full exhaust on it. But what I will do is I will like 3D print a mock-up one to show that it would fit. So I'm going to try to get the turbo on there and see how the fitment goes on there. I'm going to try my other turbo that I have, see if that fits better or worse, and see what we get, but that's fun. All right, so a little bit of grinding and a spacer, so I'll just get a T3 flange to act as a spacer, just run 2 gaskets, and bing bang boom, we have ourselves a Turbski. That is exciting. And then the drain, you know, aside from the spacer being there, drain will come down right around. I think this is going to work. So that is a $100 turbo manifold. The wastegate we'll deal with at a later time, because I still have to take the turbo kit off of the other engine. But look at that.
Like and subscribe, guys.